just a few showers here. Still quite mild, but obviously not feeling all that mild with the rain, which could well linger well into the evening across these eastern parts of England before eventually heading out into the North Sea. Clear skies follow, so it will turn quite cold again on Wednesday night into Thursday morning, a touch of frost. But again, we're back with the sunny skies for quite a few of us on Thursday. There will be a band of cloud with some showery rain zipping across Scotland. A little bit of that for northwest England, North Wales too, but it shouldn't last too long, and certainly for much of southern and eastern England. It is a sunny day and temperatures back up to 15, maybe 16 degrees Celsius, and there's more where that came from as well, because high pressure is moving in towards the end of the week and into the weekend, bringing plenty of sunshine. It will be quite windy for some, but temperatures ticking up into the mid or even high teens.
GB News is the UK's home of discussion and debate
from all perspectives.
To stay up to date on the latest stories,
make sure that you subscribe to the GB News channel
right here on YouTube.
You can watch us live 24/7 across the whole world.
You can also check out exclusive content and catch up on previous episodes of your favourite shows.
Every day, we ask the questions
that you'd ask, so why not add your voice to the conversation in the comments section?
Don't forget to subscribe. We are GB News, Britain's news channel.
Every night at 11 on GB News, we bring you the next day's stories the day before. Basically like time travel.
If it's a big story, we'll cover it, guaranteed. But we'll also have some fun along the way.
Big opinions, big laughs. Sometimes big hair.
This is
Headliners, the paper review show that won't send you to sleep like the others will.
11 p.m, 7 nights a week. Join us.
Hello there, I'm Eamon Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamon.
And Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton Tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
This is Farage at Live from Dudley. Please welcome your host, Nigel Farage.
Hello, everybody. Good evening. It's Farage at Large. I'm here in Dudley. Dudley's a bellwether for British politics. These guys got Brexit right before most of the rest of the country. Tonight, I'm going to ask them, can we afford the cost of net zero? We'll have a look at an area that's gone from Labour to Conservative, is levelling up, working in Dudley. I'll be answering a Labour MP who has said some dreadful things about me in the House of Commons today. It's happened before, but this time it's serious. And joining me on Talking Pints, Dave Watson, Afghanistan veteran, a man who was severely wounded and who is now, I think, a life inspiration to all of us. But before all of that, let's get the news.
I'm Rhiannon Jones in the GB Newsroom. TV, online and DAB plus radio. Foreign Secretary Liz Truss says the UK is going further and faster than ever after announcing 360 more sanctions on Russian individuals and organisations. The Foreign Office says those oligarchs listed today have an estimated total wealth of more than £100 billion. It's after President Volodymyr Zelensky warned Western leaders sanctions aren't enough to end the war. The White House says President Biden will travel to Brussels for a NATO summit later this month to discuss the crisis in the Ukraine. A 35-hour curfew is underway in Kyiv after more residential buildings were struck in the capital, killing at least 4 people. It'll be in place until Thursday morning, with people unable to leave their homes unless they're going to a bomb shelter. Meanwhile, in the besieged city of Mariupol, around 2,000 cars have been able to leave via a humanitarian corridor. That's according to officials. Peace negotiations between Moscow and Kyiv resumed today. An anti-war protester who interrupted a live news programme on Russian state television has avoided a jail sentence. Channel 1 editor Marina Ovsyannikova held up a sign behind the presenter saying, "They're lying to you." A Russian court has fined her 30,000 rubles, around £215, after finding her guilty of breaking protest laws. Boris Johnson says negotiations over the detention in Iran of Nazanin Zaghari-Ratcliffe are delicate. Hopes have been raised about the 43-year-old's potential release after she reportedly had her British passport returned to her. Ms. Zaghari-Ratcliffe has been detained in Iran since her arrest in 2016 on charges of plotting to overthrow the government, allegations she denies. And face coverings will remain compulsory on public transport and enclosed public spaces in Scotland. First Minister Nicola Sturgeon announced she won't relax the rules on masks due to a current spike in case numbers. The legal requirement for businesses to retain customer contact details will be dropped as planned. TV Online and DAB Plus Radio, this is GB News. Now it's back to Farage at Large from Dudley.
We're in the heart of England. We're here in Dudley. Now, I've been to Dudley before. I was here in 2016 campaigning in the referendum on a joyous, sunny day, and what fun it was. And I knew that Dudley was going to vote Brexit and probably vote Brexit in quite a big way, and so it did. And then I came back to Dudley in 2019 when it appeared that all was lost, and yet we managed to get it back on track, and a pretty amazing vote that took place here for the Brexit Party. And Dudley, a bellwether really of what's happened in this country. A Labour voting town that went for Brexit, felt let down by the Labour Party in London, and then, with 1 or 2 of them voting for me in the middle, then voted Conservative in a very, very big way. Now, not just a Conservative Member of Parliament, but a council with a big Conservative majority. So Dudley literally is at the heart of our national debate. And I'm just wondering where Dudley is on what I think is a new, huge debate facing this country. It's the aim for us to be net zero, carbon neutral by 2050. The question is, you see, not whether we want to live in a cleaner, better, nicer environment, but what's it going to cost and who's going to pay the bill? Now, Philip Hammond, former Chancellor, said it was going to cost £1 trillion to get to net zero. Other estimates I've read by academics think it could be £3 trillion. These numbers, of course, are pie in the sky. What it really means is for every household in Dudley and around the country, the cost of going to net zero is going to be tens of thousands of pounds per household between now and 2050. And whilst it may be a laudable aim, you have to ask yourself, why should these good folk be paying the cost of this when China are building between 50 and 100 new, massive coal-fired power stations every single year? So, is it worth going for net zero? What is the cost of net zero going to be? Is the cost of net zero worth it? Please, you at home can respond. Farage at gbnews.uk. Let me know what you think. Now, we're here in Dudley, and in 2019, it was estimated that 20% of households in Dudley were in fuel poverty, struggling to pay the gas and electricity bill, let alone the cost now of filling up the car. Goodness gracious me. Well, joining me, someone that knows about this, understands the numbers, Ross Clark, author and columnist. Ross, good evening.
Good evening.
Thanks for joining us here in Dudley.
Pleasure.
one of the things that I've discovered, and I couldn't believe to begin with that it was actually true, but you'll tell me whether it is when you look at our electricity bill that goes to every house in the land, you've got 5% VAT, right? Now, we know that, and that was a very specific Brexit promise that that would be removed, and it hasn't. But more shocking is 25% of the electricity bill of everybody in this room goes to environmental and social obligations. What's that when it's
Exactly.
at home?
Well, it's a mixture of things. It's subsidising wind and solar farms when they're generating electricity, and indeed when they're not generating electricity. And I think what a lot of people don't realise is that when the wind's not, or when the wind is blowing too strongly, we're actually paying to the owners of wind turbines to turn them off because the national grid cannot cope with all the electricity that they're generating. And then, of course, when the wind doesn't blow, we're paying enormous amount to owners of gas-powered stations, coal power stations, to fire them up to make up for the lack of power. And that's all an enormous cost. And we're also funding through our electricity bills insulation schemes. We're paying for something called the carbon levy, which is a tax on large industrial users, such as owners of gas and power plants. And it all adds up to 25% of your electricity.
I wonder, how many, I'd love to see a quick show of hands here. How many of you knew that 25% was added onto your electricity bill to pay for these things? How many knew about this? Hands up. And how many didn't know? You see, it's overwhelming, isn't it?
Yeah.
How have we... Ross, you've written about this, studied this for years. How have we got to a position where so much of our electricity bill is for this, and yet only a small percentage of this room even know it's true?
Well, because when we had the carbon, the Climate Change Act, well, originally passed in 2008, and then in 2019, it was the initial target was to reduce carbon emissions by 80% by 2050. And in 2019, in the dying days of Theresa May's government, when all eyes were on other things, Brexit and so on, she slipped through a little line and little bill increasing that target to net zero emissions by 2050. And you know what? There was not even a vote in the House of Commons. This is one of the most far-reaching, consequential laws that has ever been passed in modern times in this country, and there was not even a vote in the House of Commons.
This is astonishing. Now, I mentioned at the start, before introducing you, that 20% of Dudley was thought to be in fuel poverty in 2019. How bad is it going to be for people when these bills arrive?
Well, it's going to be even worse, isn't it? I mean,
how much worse?
By the end of this year, it is quite possible that energy bills will have increased 3 times on what they were last year. And of course, there are some people who will say, you know, it shows we just need more renewables to, you know, it's our reliance on fossil fuels that has put us in trouble. But there's 2 things wrong with that argument. Firstly, is that as a result of this net zero commitment, we've run down our own gas and oil industries. The North Sea has been run down at the same time.
No investment, no new projects for 3 years.
Yes, yeah. And at the same time, we've ignored this enormous well of shale gas sitting beneath the country, which we could have been tapping years ago. And instead, you know what we're doing instead? We're importing shale fracked gas from North America and from Qatar. And, you know, that arrives in refrigerated ships. And, of course, some of it, also about 5% of it, comes from Russia. And that's where we're really in problem at the moment.
Yeah, I mean, I guess there are 2 things here, aren't there? One is the rising cost of energy even before the invasion of Ukraine. Now, with the invasion of Ukraine, I guess we're not just thinking about price, we're beginning to have a debate about security. Now, Boris Johnson last week did respond to some of this by saying within days he was going to come out with a plan for how we could be energy independent. I've not heard much, have you?
I haven't. All I've heard is some ministers suggesting that, no, we're not going to do any fracking and so on. But I think what's important to remember is that what we have so far in terms of energy bills, that's just the beginning. Because to get to net zero by 2050, that relies on technology which has not either been not invented or has not been perfected yet. And we just simply do not know the cost. You can say 1 trillion, 3 trillion. Nobody knows the cost of doing something. We don't know how we're going to do it.
I tell you what, let's take a semi-detached house in Dudley, and let's say that they're going to put a heat pump in. I'm sure everybody here is thrilled about the prospect of getting rid of their gas boilers and having a heat pump. What's that going to cost them?
That will cost, in itself, will cost about £10,000. The trouble is...
not too bad, then, really.
But that's just the beginning, because there's quite a high chance that that heat pump will not heat your house. If it's a pre-1920s house, it'll have solid walls, and in order to get the heat pump to work, they don't work as, you know, pump out the same heat as a gas boiler, you'll probably have to insulate the walls. And that is likely to be another £10,000 in insulation.
But there is government help. There is government help, I believe.
There is a limited amount of government help for a certain number of households. It's you know, we haven't got the sort of full details of this yet, but it, you know, basically the Climate Change Committee, which advises the government on these sort of things, has made the point that it wants households to pay. It thinks households who should pay. And the people who are really going to be stung by this is the sort of lower rung of homeowners. You know, if you're in a rented property, well, it will be done for you. If you live in a mansion, you can probably
Yes, but your rent will, of course,
well, yes, quite
in line with that.
Yeah, but if, you know, it's people who have really struggled to get on the housing ladder, they've, you know, the home ownership dream, and then suddenly they're going to be whacked by this bill. You know, typically for an older property it could be £20,000.
But that's okay, because we're all going to have electric cars. That's going to be fantastic, isn't it?
That's another great problem. Electric cars, you know, typically at the moment cost about 50% more than the equivalent petrol model. Until a few months ago, there were people going around saying, oh no, they'll be on price parity with petrol cars by 2024. And do you know what's happened since then? You know, last week, nickel prices doubled. Lithium prices increased sharply as well.
The battery is a huge part of an electric car.
It's a huge part of the cost.
Yeah.
And when, you know, prices of rare metals go up, you know, the price of the battery goes up. So, you know, your electric car is not going to cost 50% more. By the end of the year, it'll probably be costing twice as much as a petrol model.
You've identified the problems. We've talked about the problems. We've talked about the 25% and other things. And by the way, you won't get that on other rolling news channels in this country because they don't discuss this sort of thing. But Ross, bear this in mind. You know, the overwhelming majority of people do want us to have a better, cleaner, greener environment if we possibly can. Just quickly give us some positive steps we could take.
Yeah. I'm all for renewable energy. You know, obviously there are advantages. I mean, if we could have renewable energy 100%, we wouldn't be reliant on Putin and so on, and it'd be cleaner air and everything. But at the moment, we've got too much reliance on wind and solar, and the trouble is that needs backup. It either needs backup or you need energy storage, and energy storage at the moment costs about, to store energy in a battery costs nearly £300 per megawatt hour. That is about, you know, it's about 5 times what it costs to generate the electricity in the first place.
Yeah.
So what we need to do, I mean, but there are other renewables we could test, develop. Is tidal power, you know, this is a great ignored.
Could we feasibly become, because we're importing massive amounts of energy, could we feasibly be self-sufficient in energy on these islands?
Well, we could be at the moment had we, you know, exploited our shale gas reserves. Enough shale gas, even at the lowest estimates, for 47 years' worth of consumption at current levels. You know, renewables, they generate quite a lot of, you know, electricity now, but, you know, a quarter of our electricity or so. But, you know, they need the backup.
They need the backup,
the trouble
and
is we've ignored the gas industry, which we...
Ross, Clark, I want to thank you for lifting the lid on so much of this. So much of this has been brushed under the carpet, kept away from people. You're doing great work, and I thank you for joining me tonight here in Dudley on GB News. In a moment, I'll ask, is levelling up working for Dudley? How's the health service operating here in Dudley? I'll also respond to some pretty despicable comments made about me in the House of Commons today by a Labour MP called Chris Bryant. All of that in just a moment.
GB News is the UK's home of discussion and debate
from all perspectives.
To stay up to date on the latest stories,
make sure that you subscribe to the GB News channel
right here on YouTube.
You can watch us live 24/7 across the whole world.
You can also check out exclusive content and catch up on previous episodes of your favourite shows.
Every day, we ask the questions
that you'd ask, so why not add your voice to the conversation in the comments section?
Don't forget to subscribe. We are GB News, Britain's news channel.
Every night at 11 on GB News, we bring you the next day's stories the day before.
Basically like time travel.
If it's a big story, we'll cover it, guaranteed. But we'll also have some fun along the way.
Big opinions, big laughs. Sometimes big hair.
This is
Headliners, the paper review show that won't send you to sleep like the others will.
11 p.m, 7 nights a week. Join us.
Hello there, I'm Eamon Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamon
and Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Welcome back. Very enthusiastic crowd here in Dudley. Can we afford the cost of net zero? One or two of your reactions. One viewer says, no, we produce less than 1% of global CO2 emissions, so even living like the Flintstones, I like that, it would make no difference. It's virtue signalling lunacy I get. Another says, they're all anonymous, this lot, there is no climate change emergency and no such thing as man-made climate change. It's a view. Scrap all green taxes and scrap the net zero rubbish, as people voted for the Conservatives, not for the Green Party. Well, yeah, but you know, this female Prime Minister that we've got has very strong views on green Cody says, no one voted for this. It was not in the Conservative manifesto. Immigration was and has not been controlled. Actually, in the points that Boris stood on, he did mention net zero, but not heat pumps and all the rest of the implications. David said, I think it's only worth it if the knowledge on which it was based was true and wide-ranging. We know with COVID, a very narrow narrative was chosen. I think the costs and benefits need to be looked at again. And really, David, that's what I'm calling for. I'm not questioning, actually, whether the world's environment's getting worse, because clearly in many ways it is. What I'm questioning is what we're doing in the name of it as a country that only produces 1% of CO2. And finally, John says, absolutely not. This will hit the poorest and hit them hard. And you know, that's the one thing I didn't discuss there with Ross, is that actually, when you look at all these green subsidies, what's really happened over the last 20 years is we've taken money off the poorest in society and given it, in many cases, to the richest in society, the landowners and giant foreign multinationals. And there's something very wrong about that. Now, I mentioned earlier that Dudley has swung from being Labour to being Conservative, including here on the council. And I just wonder whether Dudley is feeling that levelling up is working, because I don't actually see at the moment any evidence of it. It's one of the reasons I think energy is so important, not just security of supply, but by producing our own energy energy and hopefully bringing prices down, it isn't just everyone's house that gets affected by this, it's all manufacturing industries. This area used to be a big, proud manufacturing area. Sadly, it isn't today. And what we have to have is competitive energy. That, I think, would be real, genuine levelling up. I'm also struck that perhaps the other problem that the Conservatives may have here in Dudley is if you look at the local Dudley NHS Trust, you see over the course of the last 18 months a 70% increase in the number of patients in Dudley waiting for operations on the NHS. It is an absolutely eye-watering rise. Indeed, the West Midlands is the second worst in the whole country in terms of that rise. Waiting times, too, increasing hugely at A&E. And one of the gripes that we get all around the country is the difficulty of accessing GP appointments. So I would suggest to the Conservatives locally here that whilst they've done incredibly well to win the parliamentary seat, to get that majority on the council, they've actually got to deliver for people on levelling up and on health. Otherwise, they might find themselves in a little bit of trouble next time round. Now, my what the Farage moment. Ever since that moment at 4 o'clock in the morning on the 24th of June 2016, when we realised it was going to be a Brexit vote, the establishment could not understand how this could have happened, and they've pushed a story, both here with Brexit and in America, with Donald Trump winning. They've pushed the narrative that it was all funded by Russia. It's the Russia hoax, the Russia conspiracy. And because of the behaviour, the appalling behaviour of Vladimir Putin over the course of the last 3 weeks, they're back with that conspiracy. There's a fellow called Guy Verhofstadt. He is a European Parliament member, a former PM of Belgium, somebody that hated the idea of Brexit, loathed the fact that I even existed on the planet. And he appeared on Nick Ferrari's LBC breakfast show this morning. This is what Mr. Verhofstadt had to say.
Nigel Farage has said the conflict is because the EU and NATO tried to poke the Russian bear with a stick. What would you say to Mr. Farage?
Well, Mr. Farage, he has said already many things. So I saw him the last years in the European Parliament before Brexit, as you know. He was member of the European Parliament. And there he was all the time defending Putin. I found it a shame. And I'm thinking to Winston Churchill, who had a little bit another opinion about the responsibilities of Britain than Farage colluding with Putin. So it's not
I have
only
to
an
challenge
example
you
of
there,
Farage.
Mr. Verhofstadt. In what way did he collude with Putin? I must ask on that one.
Why no? He was simply defending the positions of Russia.
Well, Nick Ferrari ruined my day there, because I quite like the fact that Verhofstadt was on British soil saying I colluded with Putin. I've never been to Russia. I've never met Vladimir Putin, let alone colluded with him, and I thought that could have been a suable offence, but Ferrari helped him dig himself out of a hole. But you can see the hatred, you can see the loathing, and the truth is, Mr. Verhofstadt, the allies of Putin are not the Brexiteers. It's not even Donald Trump. It's the European Union, who have now paid, since Putin invaded, European Union countries have paid over 12 billion euros to Mr. Putin for oil and gas and have become wholly dependent upon him. They are the idiots in all of this. They are the colluders in all of this. And you can see, those of you at home watching this, there is the ticker showing you oil, gas and coal, the amount of money we're paying to Russia. Or not us, but Germany in particular, who appear to have got everything wrong. So I thought that was it for the day. That was the little bit of Farage ag for the day. And then we get to Parliament this afternoon, and here is Labour MP Chris Bryant.
I don't understand why Aaron Banks, frankly, isn't on the list either. Even Isabel Oakeshott now thinks that he is an agent of influence for the Russian state. And I simply point out that Nigel Farage received from Russia today £548,000, £573 in 2018 alone from the Russian state.
Quite extraordinary. I know that Mr. Brandt is a conspiracy theorist. I know that Mr. Brandt is an EU rejoiner. I know that Mr. Brandt has persistently pushed claims of the Russia hoax. Interesting, isn't it? Mr. Brandt criticises Russia Today. Well, Mr. Brandt, why did you appear on Russia Today? I wonder. Or had you forgotten that? Was that all too convenient? I, for the record, can tell you that in 2018, I didn't appear on Russia Today once, nor did I receive a single penny from Russia Today. What you are saying is unfounded, untrue, defamatory, wrong, and yet you said it, didn't you? In the House of Commons, under parliamentary privilege, hoping that your mates in the media would pick this up and run with the story. Mr. Brandt, will you please come outside of Parliament, get away from that protection and privilege that you've got, and if you believe this to be true, say it openly. I'd love you to do it. I've got a writ ready with my lawyer. And I'd really like a new motor car, very, very much indeed. Because there is not an ounce of truth in what you've said about me earning money in 2018 from Russia Today. It is all part of this awful, awful conspiracy. I am not a tool of the Kremlin, but you are making yourself look a bit of a tool, in my opinion. Right. Let's talk to some real people, unlike Chris Bryan, shall we? It is time for Barrage the Farage, that part of the show where I get questions thrown at me. I do not know what they are before they're asked. Steve, you're first up, mate.
Good evening, Nigel.
Good evening.
My question is, how can forgotten manufacturing towns like Dudley, Bilston and Albury bring factories and jobs back from China?
Well, you're quite right. Or, as a friend of mine says, China. You're right. I mean, the West Midlands has completely lost its manufacturing base. Now, we know through time that industries evolve and change, and there are cheaper cost bases in other parts of the world. We get that. However, what we have done is to disadvantage British manufacturers' energy with heavy engineering, with many of those smelting, many of those activities. Heavy engineering needs a lot of energy. Our energy bills are 50% more than America, 30% plus more than they are with our next door neighbours in France. We've disadvantaged British manufacturing. And because Boris is so proud, we've reduced our CO2 emissions more than any other Western country. Yes, by outsourcing manufacturing to India, China, other parts of the world, and then importing the goods back. I can't wave a magic wand and tell you that overnight manufacturing will come back. But I can say two things to you. Number one, that we have to be self-sufficient in energy. We should be an exporter of energy, not an importer of energy, and make sure we can provide industries with energy at good competitive prices. And secondly, end this obsession with sending as many kids as possible to university, many of whom are not naturally academics, and let's start getting some pride back in the fact that some youngsters want to be engineers, some youngsters want to be skilled, some youngsters want to work with their hands. So, competitive energy and a change in education ethos would be two good steps, in my opinion. What say you?
I agree exactly, especially with the university one where everybody thinks everybody's going to go to university, but nobody can really because they're not up to it either. But it was just a way back in the day to get people off the dole figures. Let's send them to university, they're not on the dole figures, are they? And yet people weren't prepared. Every mum and, well, not every mum and dad these days think their little Johnny and little Chloe can go to university.
Yeah.
Let's get real.
Yeah.
They can't.
Yeah. Do you know what, Steve? It's right for some people. There are some people that absolutely should go to university. There are many others who would have a much more successful life, earn a great deal more money, learning trades and skills. We've got to get that back. Thank you very much indeed. Next up, I've got Raj. Raj, good evening.
Good evening, Nigel. I wish you a lot of good health.
for your oncoming birthday. Hope you help this country now and forever.
It's the earliest happy birthday I've ever had, but thank you.
I do it on the same day as you.
Oh, okay, there you are.
My question is, post-Brexit, what do you think how UK businesses are doing?
Well, look, I think post-Brexit, UK businesses are doing well, despite the fact we've not taken advantage of what Brexit offers us. You know, think of the insurance industry as one massive employer in this country. Every town's got insurance offices. They're not just in London, they're scattered all around the West Midlands and everywhere else. You know, EU regulations making the cost of insurance in this country too high, too bureaucratic, and it's taken now 2 years for this government to even start talking about it. Now, the City Minister, John Glenn, says they're going to look at some of the EU directives on that industry. That's just one little but very specific example of what could be done. The argument is that the government have been consumed by the pandemic, and that has taken up all of their energies. But then there are hundreds of thousands of civil servants working in Whitehall. Well, there were. They've all been at home drinking beer in the garden for the last 2 years, getting full pay. We've just not, this government has not turned its attention to it. And I also think this government doesn't understand small and medium-sized businesses. It just isn't in that mindset. It doesn't realise, running a small business, the amount of time that is taken up with petty regulation that needs to be simplified, if not got rid of, and they're not in that space. So look, I do believe that Brexit, in terms of global trade, has opened us up to the world in a way that wouldn't be possible as EU members. I do believe that Brexit has allowed the government to speak much more strongly on Ukraine than it would have done and could have done as an EU member. It saw a vaccine rollout. You know, the AUKUS deal on nuclear submarines with Australia. There are things that we've done that are good, but in terms of business, I think we've squandered it, Raj. What do you think?
Absolutely, I agree with you. Our trade with European countries have dropped because now they're imposing a 12% duty at the point of export. That was not there. I think we could do much better.
Yeah.
We could do much better.
Yeah, I think, you know what, that is actually the overwhelming feeling of all businesses in this country.
You've been a business person and you can understand. That's the reason I asked this question.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right, and we need a few more business people on the front bench because we haven't really got any. Thank you very much indeed. Hi. Owen, you're next up.
Good evening, Nigel.
Good evening.
If Russia was to go further and invade a nation such as Poland, would you personally support British troops on the ground?
In that case, I would. I hope and pray that Putin still has some degree of rationality, though I'm not sure, given his behaviour in the last few weeks. One thing for certain, if he was to do that, it wouldn't just be NATO that would fight him tooth and nail, the Poles would fight him tooth and nail. Difficult to think of a European country more embattled over the last 100 years, suffered more than the Poles suffered in the last 100 years. They would not allow this man to walk into their country. And I think militarily, he's clearly stretched much further than he thought he was going to be in Ukraine. And whatever the rights and wrongs of Ukraine as a country, and it's got corruption and all sorts of problems, but you know what? Actually, I think it's quite moving to see these Ukrainian men of all ages, some with no military experience, picking up rifles and defending their homeland. It's what our country used to be like. I hope it still would be today if we faced that. But would you defend NATO?
I would defend NATO.
Yeah, I think actually that's how we all feel. And Putin better know that. It's a shame the American president isn't a bit more prominent in his fight. But never mind. Thank you. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Thank you. Roger, you're next up. Good evening.
Good evening, Nigel. Welcome to Dudley and welcome to the Black Country.
Thank you very much.
My question for you is, do you think the next generation of MPs will be better or worse than the ones we have now? And I'm being polite.
Well, I think we became consumed, didn't we? Both the main parties became consumed with career politicians.
Yeah.
You know, with people who left Oxford with their degree, went to work in research offices, became members of Parliament in their late 20s, spent their weeks together in Westminster, their weekends together doing whatever they do, appeared to have no hobbies, no life, no interest outside politics, a level of intermarriages that's almost off the charts, and just not representative of society as a whole. I do think that the 2019 intake of Conservative members of Parliament from the so-called red wall seats, and we're kind of talking about that here in many ways, I do actually think there is some encouragement by some of those new Conservative members of Parliament that have gone in. One thinks of Lee Anderson from Ashfield, who I had on the show last week. You know, Lee, a former miner, you know, a guy that really is rooted in his community. So I think it's a little bit better than it was a couple of years ago. It's got a lot further to go. I'd be very happy to see the average age of members of Parliament go up by 10 years and see both parties full of people who served, and whether that's running their own business, being in the army, working for a charity, being a nurse, I don't care what they've done, a Parliament made up of people with real experience of life would be a damn sight better than what we've had for the last 20 years.
Yeah.
Right, I've got time for two more very, very quickly. Elliot, do you have a question for me? Elliot, good evening.
Good evening, Nigel. How are you?
Very well.
Good. Acknowledging that the answer ultimately to this eludes anybody, do you feel that Putin's ambitions perhaps surpass that of Ukraine? I'm interested to hear what your...
Well, I mean, I spoke to David Starkey, the historian, about this a couple of weeks ago, and he thinks that Putin has got into his mind this sort of greater, sort of Catherine the Great Russia. And that, of course, would take the Baltic states and much of Poland and would lead, actually, very much back to the question that Owen asked me a moment ago. If he does, he's utterly deluded. And if he really thought Russian tanks were going to be welcomed or garlanded with flowers in western Ukraine, clearly he's been in the ivory tower for far too long. I always thought he was quite a clever, rational player. I think he's got into a war. Even as far as he's gone now, he can't possibly win. Because even if he takes it militarily, the resistance will be there for decades and decades to come. So in his own little fantasy, perhaps, but it isn't going to happen. What do you think?
I think with the level of pressure that has been obviously currently exerted upon him, it does leave him in a very difficult position where potentially his demise is inexorable, perhaps, of course.
Yeah, you know, the trouble is, how do they get rid of him? I don't know. Thank you for the question. I'm going to take one last quick one. Chris. We're running short of time, but Chris, far away.
Good evening, Nigel. Welcome to the Black Country.
Thank you.
Now we're out of the EU, do you think the government should be promoting us for all of us to buy more British products similar to the 60s? I'm back in Britain. What do you think?
Yeah, well, of course, we couldn't do that as EU members. We weren't allowed to do that because that would have been discriminatory against our European friends and neighbours. Look, I think one of the things that's happened with Ukraine is, and we had that debate with Ross a bit earlier on, is the idea that you're self-sufficient, the idea that you do things closer to home, the idea that you're less reliant. And we've got a real problem here. It isn't just energy, it's food, and it's many, many other things. And I actually think, yes, the idea that we do back British businesses, back British goods, try and buy more British products, I'm for it, and I'm guessing you are too.
Definitely. I used to be a sales manager. I always supported Britain. And I think you're the only guy that does support Britain. The Prime Minister, I've never heard him push Britain like you, Nigel.
Well, we'll put some pressure on him and maybe he will. Thank you. Right, OK. In a moment, it's going to be Talking Pints. I'm going to be joined by an inspirational figure called Dave Watson. I'll see you in a moment.
GB News is the UK's home of discussion and debate
from all perspectives.
To stay up to date on the latest stories,
make sure that you subscribe to the GB News channel
right here on YouTube.
You can watch us live 24/7 across the whole world.
You can also check out exclusive content and catch up on previous episodes of your favourite shows.
Every day, we ask the questions
that you'd ask, so why not add your voice to the conversation in the comments section?
Don't forget to subscribe. We are GB News, Britain's news channel.
Every night at 11 on GB News, we bring you the next day's stories the day before. Basically like time travel.
If it's a big story, we'll cover it, guaranteed. But we'll also have some fun along the way.
Big opinions, big laughs. Sometimes big hair.
This is
Headliners, the paper review show that won't send you to sleep like the others will.
11 p.m, 7 nights a week. Join us.
Hello there, I'm Eamon Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamon.
And Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton Tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Well, we're back here in Dudley. It is. It's always my favourite part of the show. It's Talking Pints. I'm joined by Dave Watson. Dave, thank you, mate, for being with us here in Dudley. You live just down the road. Now, look, Scots Guards, beating your family, and there you are. You're 18 years old. You're a Scots Guardsman. Boots polished up like glass. And you're on ceremonial duty at Buckingham Palace.
I am.
How good did that feel?
It were life-changing, because when I was a young lad and I've been to London, I didn't think them guys were the military, you know what I mean? I didn't see that side of the military until I joined, and then I realised it was the military there. And
actually, one of the best sales points for Britain.
Oh, yeah.
You know, I mean, you know, foreign visitors come, they see the guards on duty at the Royal Palace and they think, wow, I mean, these guys are impressive.
My photos all over the world.
Yeah, and you got to know the royal family doing it.
I did.
And I'm told, rumour has it you danced with the Queen. That can't be true.
I did dance with the Queen, yeah.
Now that is pretty amazing. That was how your soldiering career began, but of course the Guards, fighting regiments, always have been for centuries, and you're off to Afghanistan, you're off to Helmand. There aren't many of our generation that actually know what it must feel like to be heading off to a real war. What was it like heading out there?
It were all right at first, but it were when we got on that flight flying over there, and that's when it become real. And especially when you're leaving your families behind.
Yeah.
Because you don't know whether you're going to come back or you don't know whether you're going to be seeing them again. So that's what's the scary part. And then when you get over there, that's when it hits you.
And you were out on patrol, and you had the deep misfortune. It wasn't just you; it happened to lots of people. Of stepping on an IED. Do you remember much of it?
I remember everything. I remember it like it was yesterday. Yeah.
Do you really?
But the doctors and what were there, they said because of the size of me, I was 6'1", and I were pretty built, and with the size of me, that's how I survived, and that's how I coped. If it happened to someone that was smaller than me, they wouldn't have had a chance.
I mean, the extent of your injuries was massive, obviously. I mean, how do you? I mean, I've been through very bad road traffic accident, plane crash. I've had bits of me broken and all sorts of things. Nothing like you've been through. But you sort of think when you're recovering from these things, was I really unlucky, or was I really lucky? It's a really difficult one. How did you deal with all of that?
Well, at first, you feel like you're unlucky, but then you come to hospital, and you're in your ward, and the reason that I become lucky was there a guy next to me, a young lad, younger than me, missing both his legs, a few fingers, and he was blind as well. So he was worse off than what I were. And then it's when you go to Headley Court, that's when you see all the injuries, and you realise how lucky you are. And if this didn't happen to me, I wouldn't have met my wife, I wouldn't have had my kids, and I wouldn't be doing what I'm doing now. So this happening to me is the making of me.
It's just amazing to see that positive mental attitude, and actually quite inspiring, I think. I mean, it really is. inspiring. I know you felt let down by the army and let down by the government when it came to the operation. Just share that briefly with us.
Yeah, so I got up and walking, and the sockets what I was using at the time were hurting me. They were breaking my scar tissue down, so I was bleeding a lot. So I was off my legs for 2.5 years. And then I found an operation over in Australia, osseointegration. Got rid of the sockets. I have a metal implant inside my leg, and my leg connects to that. I did some research, and the operation were going to cost £124,000 to £125,000. I went to my regiment, asked for help. I did everything they asked. They still turned around and said no. I had to fund that myself from the compensation that I got from these injuries happening to me. Why that money's meant to last me the rest of my life, I had to fund it all out of that.
Just amazing. We let our people down as badly as this. It's just disgusting, to be honest with you. But you did it. And suddenly, sport, the Invictus Games. And we've got Dave Watson, suddenly a competitor. And it's shot put, it's
You're the first in your family to go to university, so whatever challenges your childhood presented, it didn't stop you going to university. How did you find it?
Never felt like a student. I was always like a townie who was doing a degree and a little bit apprehensive about it. None of my friends really had gone to university. They're all trained as plumbers and electricians and that kind of thing. And it was completely not what I expected, a lot more down to earth, and I studied politics, so you can decide whether that was useful or not.
You say you played hard and you worked hard, you did your schoolwork too. You get into Oxford.
Yeah.
Wow.
I know. But I just was like a fish out of water, like, for most of it, to be honest. Although I did make some really good friends there.
Why were you a fish out of water?
GB News is the UK's home of discussion and debate.
From on my own.
Good.
So I don't want. I go to a lot of places: schools, colleges, universities, businesses. I do afternoon speaking, but I try and educate people. There's more to life than just work and whatever else you do. There's time to get out and do other stuff. Set yourself goals, reach them goals, then set yourself a bigger goal. It all works. It's all part of your mental health.
You see, I do worry, maybe I'm wrong about this, but I do worry that people who are born with disabilities or get disabilities through accidents or no fault of their own, I do worry that if we treat them as victims, and if they feel like victims, they're going to get trapped into a life of thinking, well, I can't do this and I can't do that, and somehow you've said the hell with it, I'm just going to do all these things.
Yeah, like, especially with young kids what get born with disabilities, the parents wrap them up in cotton wool because they don't want them to get hurt.
Because they're scared,
Yeah, and the way I see it is don't wrap them up in cotton wool. Let them do what they want to do. They can do whatever they put their mind to. I'm setting myself a goal at the moment. I'm trying to get on I'm a Celebrity, get me out of here. I am. To show that no matter whether you've got a disability, anything is possible. And if I can get onto that...
Sort of actors and celebs get a bit scared of the creepy crawlers. Compared to what you've been through, that would be nothing, really, would it?
Breakfast, dinner and tea straight there, you know what I mean?
So I'm a Celebrity. That's the next big goal for Dave, is it?
That's the next big goal for me. See if I can get Anton Deck to let me on I'm a Celebrity, to prove to everybody out there with disabilities anything's possible when you put your mind to it.
Well, I have to say, I love your positive mental attitude. I have to ask you one thing that is not so easy. Is 20 years we were in Afghanistan, 460 odd of our soldiers killed, thousands this is forgotten quite often, thousands wounded very seriously. And now there's a war happening again in Ukraine. Does man never learn?
They don't. They don't. And I have said to a lot of people, if it wasn't for my disability and having my family, my background's the military. I'd go out there tomorrow and help them if I could, you know what I mean? It's my background, it's what I know. And I'd be out there tomorrow if I could. So
I believe you. The whole of the audience believes you. And I have to say, Dave Watson, I've interviewed lots and lots of people on Talking Pints, people from all sorts of backgrounds, people who've succeeded, people who've overcome all sorts of difficulties. I think you're one of the most inspiring people I have ever met, and it's an absolute privilege to have you here tonight on GB News. And I can't wait to see you on I'm a Celebrity. Get me out of here. We always try, with Farage at Large, we always do our absolute best to try to find a local singer, a local band, be whatever it is. And we have a girl tonight for you, born in Dudley. She's Dudley through and through. She's going to sing a song that we all know very, very well. Don't be shy. You can all join in if you want to. Please take it away, Darcy Edwards.
Each morning I get up, I die a little, can barely stand on my feet. Take a look in the mirror and cry, Lord, look what you're doing to me. I've spent my years believing you, but I just can't get no relief. Lord, somebody, oh somebody, can anybody find me somebody to love? I work hard every day, yeah, I work till I ache my bones. At the end, I take home my heart and pay all my own. I go down on my knees and I start to pray till the tears run down from my eyes. Lord, somebody, oh somebody, can anybody find me somebody to love? I work hard every day, I try and I try and I try, but everybody wants to put me down. They say that I'm going crazy. They say I got a lot of water in my brain. I got no common sense, no left to believe in. Yeah, 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 yeah. Lord, somebody, oh somebody, can anybody find me somebody to love, somebody to love, somebody to
Hello, I'm Alex Deakin with your latest weather updates. A very different day of weather to come tomorrow compared to today. Much more cloud and for some wet weather, especially across parts of England. But it will be a brighter day in the far northwest. Today, across the western half of Scotland, Northern Ireland, this weather front's been moving in, bringing cloud and rain. We have another one approaching from the south, and they're going to kind of merge together to bring a wet spell, especially over eastern England during Wednesday. At the moment, though, the rain is still just slowly tracking south across Scotland. As skies clear for Northern Ireland, it could turn quite foggy and certainly will turn quite chilly. But for most, with more cloud and Last night it won't be anything like as cold, with temperatures at 6 to 8 Celsius to start Wednesday. A cloudy start, but for most it will be a dry start. However, this area of rain trickles south. Another area of rain moves up from the south, spreading into parts of the Midlands, eastern England. At times, Wales and the southwest seeing some rain also. And in places, that rain could be quite heavy. The brighter colours there. But further west, turning a bit drier and certainly a brighter day compared to today for Northern Ireland, Western Scotland. Just a few showers here. Still quite mild, but obviously not feeling all that mild with the rain, which could well linger well into the evening across these eastern parts of England before eventually heading out into the North Sea. Clear skies follow, so it will turn quite cold again on Wednesday night into Thursday morning. A touch of frost, but again, we're back with the sunny skies for quite a few of us on Thursday. There will be a band of cloud with some showery rain zipping across Scotland. A little bit of that for northwest England, North Wales too, but it shouldn't last too long, and certainly for much of southern and eastern England. It is a sunny day and temperatures back up to 15, maybe 16 degrees Celsius, and there's more where that came from as well, because high pressure is moving in towards the end of the week and into the weekend, bringing plenty of sunshine. It will be quite windy for some, but temperatures ticking up into the mid or even high teens.
GB News is the UK's home of discussion and debate
from all perspectives.
To stay up to date on the latest stories,
make sure that you subscribe to the GB News channel
right here on YouTube.
You can watch us live 24/7 across the whole world.
You can also check out exclusive content and catch up on previous episodes of your favourite shows.
Every day, we ask the questions
that you'd ask, so why not add your